us now on the program is Jeremy Johnson, a student at Oakland University who is also serving the Great Lakes State on the Michigan Department of State's Collegiate Student Advisory Task Force. He's one of 2 students from Oakland University who are selected among the 25 students across the state serving on this advisory task force. Jeremy, thank you for being on the program.
Yeah, thank you for having me. Happy to be here.
I appreciate everyone. So first off, tell us what you're studying at Oakland University and why did you ultimately choose to go to Oakland?
Yeah, I am studying political science. I'm in my 3rd year. I also have a minor in philosophy. Chose to go to OU because it was an affordable option for me. When I toured campus, I liked the environment. And ultimately, with my political engagement work, I was always very interested in politics. As soon as I got to campus, I've been doing this work for some time now, and that encouraged me to apply for the Collegiate Task Force.
So you said you've been interested in civic engagement and in politics for a while. Obviously, that interest is something that you'd like to turn into a career as you're studying political science at Oakland University. So when did you first become civically involved, or did you realize that civic engagement and political activity in your community and in surrounding communities was something that you were passionate about?
I mean, I've thought for a while that political engagement is pretty vital. Obviously, I wasn't able to vote or really do much political activity before I was 18, but as soon as I got to campus, I knew that I wanted to do something in politics. I knew that I wanted to help out in some way when it comes to getting the student body more involved. I quickly began helping with voter registration drives, encouraging people to vote, helping with events that would increase voter participation on campus. And ultimately, I think it is just very important that students get out to vote because students historically, the youth historically, have been very underrepresented at the polls. Trends have been better. In 2020, more young people turned out to vote than in a very long time, but I still think that there's a lot more work that we can do. And through all the work that I've done at OU, I hope that I have contributed in some positive way to improving that trend.
We're joined by Jeremy Johnson, Oakland University student and one of 25 members of the Michigan Department of State's Collegiate Student Advisory Task Force, joining us on the Michigan Megacast. We'll get to the task force in a minute, but on campus at Oakland University, what are some of the ways that you have worked to increase that civic engagement of the student body, not just yourself and those around you, but really the activity across campus, especially in the last couple of years and as we're going forward, where we are a very politically active society and we hear more about the actions of our political leaders and the actions of those civically involved more than ever?
Yeah, certainly. So a lot of my work took place leading up to the 2020 elections that happened during my 2nd year at OU. A lot of the work that I've done has been in collaboration with our student government, Oakland University Student Congress, as well as the Center for Civic Engagement with Professor David Dulio. A lot of what we did was hosting voter registration drives, putting up a lot of posters and signage, letting people know about their online options when it comes to registering to vote or getting an absentee ballot. We hosted a free stamp program so that we could eliminate that monetary barrier when it comes to sending in absentee ballots. We hosted a whole lot of events, debate watch parties, that sort of thing. And we've been working very extensively on long-term programs that would increase student voter participation in the long run, things like encouraging classes to be canceled on election days, things like encouraging various departments that interact with first-year students to host voter registration drives of their own, and all kinds of other things. And I hope that we can resume a lot of these programs and a lot of these efforts for the 2022 elections. And I'm hopeful that these midterms would be successful just as 2020 was for OU.
So as you're doing these get out the vote drives and you're trying to get more people on campus, younger people to get involved, especially in those non-presidential elections, those midterms, those primaries especially, where turnout overall is significantly lower, but especially among the younger populations. Was that a tough experience to try to convince students to be more politically involved in times where it's less publicized, such as midterm elections, certainly the primaries? What was your experience like as you are going through that endeavor and trying to garner more activity politically on campus, regardless of party affiliation?
Yeah, I think 2020 was a very different political environment. The election was obviously very contentious. We had a presidential election that year. We had senators going up in the state of Michigan. So I think people were already pretty mobilized to go and vote. So I can't necessarily claim all of the success that OU had on behalf of my efforts, but I do know that students were very interested in voting. And I think that Student voter mobilization is difficult for different reasons than people may conventionally think. I think that once you remove the barriers that students may have in front of them when it comes to voting, whether it be monetary or timely or whatever else the barrier may be, I think students generally do want to go and vote. It's just they're unaware of their options. They may have classes that day. They may not have the money to drive out to the polling stations or send their absentee ballot in. They may have forgot about the elections. They weren't being reminded. And I think once you remove those barriers and you do all of that work that entails, I think students generally will go and vote. And I think that's what we saw, at least for OU. We had a 73.4%, I think, voter turnout rate in 2020. Obviously, in 2022, it'll probably be lower just because that's how things trend. There's not much we can do to control for that. But I think that if we work to remove the barriers on a systemic level, kind of a university-wide level, I think that overall voter participation will go up. I mean, ultimately, even if we have a 100% voter registration rate, if students actually can't go and vote, if they don't have the capacity to go and do it, they won't be able to. So I'm of the opinion that we can encourage all we want, but ultimately removing the barriers is the number one thing.
So tell us about your experience on the Department of State's Collegiate Student Advisory Task Force. How does that then help to inform the actions that you're taking at Oakland University to help get your community more civically involved?
Yeah, sometimes doing this work, I feel very alone. There's very few people on campus that are willing to collaborate, that are even interested in voter participation, voter engagement work, especially in a midterm election year, especially during 2020 when there were no statewide elections in Michigan. But being on the Collegiate Task Force, it's very interesting because it's a lot of people that think the exact same way that I do. And we've only had one meeting so far. We had it last week. We have another meeting coming up next week. But the first meeting was really all about getting to know each other, getting to know each other's goals, and setting some goals for ourselves of what we really want to accomplish, what issues we really want to address. It was about a 2-hour meeting where we were just talking about those issues, talking about what we think is important. And I'm very hopeful, more hopeful than I've been in a while about this kind of stuff, because it can be really tough working on your own as a student in this space on an issue that you feel like maybe many people don't care about. But when you get into a room that is full of 25 to 35 people that all really want to work towards the same end that you do, it's inspiring. And I'm really grateful to be given this opportunity.
We're joined by Jeremy Johnson, Oakland University student and one of 25 members of the Michigan Department of State's Collegiate Student Advisory Task Force, joining us on the Michigan Megacast. He's also on that task force with fellow Oakland University classmate Anna Van Hese. So how did the two of you become involved with the task force? Were you recruited by the Department of State? Was this something you applied for? What was that process like?
I'm not sure what it was like for Anna, but for me, I had just seen that applications were open. I had seen that the Secretary of State's department was looking for students from college campuses that were interested in this work that I really wanted to help. And I thought it was just right up my alley. I thought it was perfect for me. So I applied. I went through the interview process, waited to hear back from them, and eventually I was notified that I got it.
And so you mentioned that this work has just begun. What are some of the future plans of the task force or tasks of the task force going forward? Obviously, civic engagement plays a key role in that, encouraging students to be politically involved, to go out and vote and learn the options that they have for voting in their all across the state of Michigan. But what other tasks or what other projects are underway or being discussed with the task force at this time?
Yeah, so I think the main direction of the task force is still really up to us. I think it's up to us to decide what we're going to do. There's a few requirements of us. We have to put on a couple of voter engagement events. There's some things that we have to do on our own campus, like they're requiring us to put up signage and make sure we're doing our own things as well as working with the task force and collaborating with each other. But outside of that, I think the direction is really, they're leaving it up to the students, which I think is really great. If I could have it my way, 100%, not saying that I'm going to try to control everything here, but what I would like to see out of the task force is a large focus on convincing administrations to take, again, university-wide action to remove the barriers that students may have to voting. Again, it's really hard to do this work on your own. Even if you have, say, a group of 10 people working on voter engagement on your campus, it's still really hard to do it, especially with campuses that are very large. And no matter how much we encourage students to register to vote, to get out to vote, it's really all about the barriers that are preventing them from voting. And I think administrators specifically have a very unique role when it comes to that. And they have the ability, unlike anyone else on campus, to get rid of those barriers and encourage students to vote on a university-wide level. And I hope that's what the task force aims to do, because I think that's what we have the power to do. That's what we have the reach to do. And that's what I think would be the most responsible use of our time together.
Jeremy, through your efforts, the efforts of yourself and Anna and other students at Oakland University, the university has been designated a voter-friendly campus. Can you talk about what that means to be a voter-friendly campus, and what goes into meeting the requirements to have that declaration, to have that designation at Oakland University?
I can't remember the specific statistics that we had to reach. There were certain numbers we had to reach in voter registration rates, voter turnout rates, that sort of thing. I can't remember the exact numbers they wanted us to reach, but I believe that as a part of the All-In Challenge, they give you those designations. I think we received the voter-friendly campus designation last year. I received that in part with the work that I've done with Professor David Dulio and the Center for Civic Engagement. All that's really about is a kind of a third-party authentication that your campus is doing what they should be doing to encourage student voter participation. I don't think it includes or it necessarily differentiates between who is doing that work, whether it be administrators encouraging it or students encouraging it or different departments. But it is just a way for us to say, we are doing the work, we're putting in the time, and we're making sure students get out to vote. And we're very happy to receive that designation. I remember we received a lot of accolades and a lot of praise for that. So very happy to be a part of that.
We're joined by Jeremy Johnson, Oakland University political science student and member of the Michigan Department of State's Collegiate Student Advisory Task Force, joining us on the Michigan Megacast. Jeremy, if others on campus would like to join you and join Anna in your efforts to increase civic engagement on campus and political involvement and help other students learn about the political process and their ability to vote on campus at Oakland University and in their hometowns, but of course they at this time can't join the task force. But what are some ways that they can help you and Anna in your efforts at Oakland University and get involved themselves in this effort?
Biggest thing I would say is if you're already a part of student organizations, make sure you're getting all your friends registered to vote. Make sure you're getting all your members registered to vote. The work that I've done, as I mentioned, has been mostly through our student congress and our student government and all the relationships we have through that organization. But sometimes just because our reach isn't infinite, we miss some groups. And those groups tend to have student organizations that they belong to. And if you feel like your group is underrepresented, you feel like your student voices are not being heard, then I would encourage you to organize yourselves and register everyone to vote and encourage everyone to vote. But outside of that, if you're on Oakland University's campus, I would encourage you to reach out to Student Congress and get involved as much as you can. You can just do this voter engagement work if that's what you're interested in. And ultimately, I think that, like I said, if you're a part of an organization, you can organize and do that work yourself. It's pretty easy to set up a voter registration drive. If you want to work with others, you can reach out to Student Congress and,
Jeremy, on that note, any events coming up or on campus at Oakland University for voter engagement, for voter registration, or anything else on this topic?
At this time, I'm not sure. The semester just got out, so I don't know really what events are coming up. But we'll have plenty planned for the fall. I believe National Voter Registration Day is on September 22nd or 23rd, somewhere in there. So I'm sure we'll have something planned for that. And I'm hoping lots of exciting get out the vote measures, get out the vote events, that kind of thing, once we get closer to midterms.
Jeremy, thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you for having me.